Well, good evening and welcome to the sixth in this series of Entrepreneurial Bosses. Now, in this series, which is run from in a partnership between the Institute of Economic Affairs, the University of Buckingham, Vinson Centre for the Public Understanding of Economics and Entrepreneurship, and also the Buckingham Enterprise and Innovation Union, I interview entrepreneurs. Sometimes they're straightforward, they set up a business or one or two businesses. Sometimes it's a bit more complicated than that. We had, for example, Matthew Elliott, who set up 6 campaign organisations over time. And tonight we've got a fascinating lady, Karen Davies, who I have worked with for some time. Is that fair to say I've worked with you sometime? Exactly. Who set up an organisation called Purple Shoots, which helps entrepreneurs from financially excluded communities. One of my passions is about how we help people who are from poorer communities or from poorer parts, and how we actually help them to climb that ladder, as it were. And I always start off with the same question, and what I'll do is we'll probably have a conversation for about half an hour, and then I will open up to the audience, and we try and wrap up within an hour, so it's nice and neat. I know you are all busy people, and you all have places to go. But if we do carry on, please, I will warn you that we might continue for a few more minutes. So let me start with the question I always start with. Karen, you decided to set up Purple Shoots. When did you set that up? And tell me about the story that made you decide, you know what, I'm going to set this thing up. I'm going to go out on my own. You know, just like many entrepreneurs, they come to a decision, I'm going to set up my own business or my own venture. What was it? And when did you set it up? And what was that story that led to that?
Okay, so there is quite a story.
That's fine.
So Purple Shoots has been going 13 years, so it was 13 years ago. And actually, one of the things I think I could have done is I could have done it sooner. But anyway, that's beside the point. And so the thing that maybe tipped me over the edge to do it was possibly the last job I had, because I worked quite a lot of years in the financial services industry. And I'd worked in the city here, and then for an investment bank in South Wales, where I live now. And every organisation I worked for always turned away the same people, which were people who had a bad credit score for some reason, who had something in their past that would hold them back, like a caring responsibility or an illness, a disability. There's a whole raft of people who just fall outside what financial services industry will do. And as a result, all their talent is wasted, because these were good people that I was meeting when I worked for these organisations with good business ideas, but they were rejected. So that it was partly that frustration. And also, the people that I was working with, I remember them sort of absolutely loving what they were doing and sort of maximising the money they could get out of these people. And I think, well, I don't love this, so I want to do something that my heart is in. And actually, to go back to university days, I'd studied geography and economic development at university, and I'd had a heart for social justice from those days, but never quite used it. And then I subsequently discovered, whilst I was working in the city, I think, the Muhammad Yunus story in the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. And I suppose in the back of my mind, I thought, well, why isn't there one of these in the UK? And so then all this came together, and I started exploring around the Grameen. I discovered there was going to be a Grameen Bank in Glasgow. And this was around the same time I was starting up. So I don't know where I got the gumption from, but I just emailed the professor. I said, I suppose I couldn't come and meet these people, could I? And he said yes, and invited me up, which was lovely. And by that point, I'd already come up with the name Purple Shoots, and I took a lady who became one of my trustees with me. And she's not very mobile, so we flew, which isn't very green, but anyway, we flew. And we needed to hire a car, because you can't fly from Cardiff to Glasgow, you have to fly to Edinburgh. You can now, but you couldn't then. And we hired a car. Sorry, this is an aside, but it's quite a funny story, because they sent us to these big garages where the hire cars are, and there's a whole line of cars, and you're in bay number, whatever it is, 26. So we got into this car parking area. It was a big line of silver cars. In our bay was a purple car. And Paul and I, she said, oh, it's a sign. Anyway, so I met the professor, and I met the people from Grameen, and they were very nice when I met them, and very keen to work together. And I explained that I wanted to do something in Wales, and maybe we could partner. They gave me all their forecasts, lots of information, and then 2 weeks later, I had an email saying, "Oh, we've spoken to the Grameen head office, they don't want us to partner with anyone, so we don't want to help you. And that was the end of that. But anyway, I still went ahead and started Purple Shoots. But,
now, one of the things we find with lots of entrepreneurs, at some stage they take a risk. You're leaving I assume, a quite well-paid job. It puts bread and perhaps a few other things on the table. Did you think about that loss of income and did you save money up? How did that work? And how did you think about that sort of money calculation? And I may well not see an income for a very long time. Did you save up a certain amount of money? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I feel sort of not exactly a fraud, but because the people I work with have got nothing and they risk everything when they start a business, because they risk losing their benefits when they start a business. And I didn't have that because my husband had a job, my children were grown up and independent, and so I could afford to lose the income. And so I felt like, in a way that wasn't the risk was more that I would lose the money that I'd managed to accumulate from some investors, and the failure to prove something that I believed in. I think there was that sort of risk, but there was very little personal risk for me. I think in terms of starting it, it was more. I mean, the people I worked with thought I'd gone mad. That I had a lot of sort of ridicule for thinking that I could set up a business that was going to support. But people in the financial services industry still think I'm mad.
Right.
But yeah, financially, I could afford to take the risk. I did lose a big income, but I was unhappy where I was working, so I was willing to have a go at.
I don't want to get to marriage counselling here, but what was the conversation like with your husband about this?
Oh, he was very supportive. He was fine about it. Yeah, he's sort of. I think if he'd known how many hours I'd have worked, he might have been less supportive. But no, he was fine about it.
So then, tell me about how you go about starting something like Purple Shoots. I mean, actually, the question I should ask, and I don't always ask, where did the name come from?
The name, okay. Well, so I did a bit of research about how to reach the people we wanted to reach, and a lot of them I found were put off by finance and the word business. They didn't think they were entrepreneurs, so I didn't want to use the word entrepreneur. So I wanted a name that sounded a little bit like hopeful and about growth and change. And I asked actually a man who I knew who had run multiple businesses and was good at branding to come up with some names. And he came up with a list, and Purple Shoots was on it, so that's the one I picked. Purple is a fairly neutral colour. It was then. It doesn't
before
have,
UKIP.
Yeah, before UKIP. It doesn't have any other. It's not conservative. It's not left. It doesn't mean. So I thought it was quite a safe colour, and it's not particularly gendered either. It's not sort of feminine or masculine.
And obviously, did you start doing this overnight? It's a thinking process. How long were you preparing to set up Purple Shoots before you left the job? That makes sense.
Yeah, quite a lot of months. In fact, recently I've been clearing out some old papers, and I found all the research I did. I'm quite impressed. I did a lot. So I did a lot of work on the Grameen Bank before they wouldn't work with me. But then I found out about looked at what worked, what didn't, what people were doing in other parts of the world. So I did a lot of research on that. I talked to quite a few people. I had one particular sort of a person who I did talk to a lot about it. So there was kind of one advisor that was the main one, but with a few others. But yeah, I did check, and I did try to research the people that I was trying to reach. But I already knew there was quite a big demand because of the job I'd been doing before and the people I turned away. So I was pretty sure that.
And so, how long do you think you had been researching before you made the jump, as it were?
I think probably properly researching, probably 6 months before I made the jump.
Yeah. But had you been doing bits and pieces before that 6 months?
Yeah, I think yes.
Yeah. So it's something we hear from other entrepreneurs, how much research they did to understand the market and to prepare the market. And then you touched upon it there. Were you completely on your own? It sounds like you had some people to talk to. Tell me about the advice that you sought to help you make that jump.
So I had, I suppose there was me and one other who he wasn't. I did pay him a bit, and he was sort of on the fringes of it, but giving me advice. A lot of, for example, there was one when we first started. We did some forecasts together of what we thought we'd needed, what we would lend, how many loans we'd do, and in the first few months, there were tons of them, and I panicked because I thought we were going to run out of money. And I remember calling him and saying, "Oh, this is all going wrong. The money's all. I'm running out of money." And he just said, "Karen, can't you see that this is success?" And it was he just turned it completely on his head, which was so that different attitude I found really helpful.
And where did you find him, as it were?
I found him on the sort of business networking circuits. I met him, and we got on well.
And had you met him as a result of seeking to set up Purple Shoots, or had you met him before?
I'd met him before that,
right.
Yeah. Met him before that.
And he'd been supportive when you told him, "I want to do this."
He was really keen to get involved. Yeah.
And tell me about that incident. You're saying that you were panicking. There was lots of money going out. I can understand that. But, probably not as much money coming in. But what made you, apart from the advice from the mentor, as it were, what made you panic less, as it were?
It was the reframing of it. It was almost like he was saying, "Well, this is proof. This is proof that what you're doing is needed.
Yes.
You just need to, tell more people about it." And we did an event not long after that, a sort of a launch event, but we've been going 6 months. And I remember we just ran in the background and sort of a whole series just of pictures and names of the business that was started, of the people we supported. And somebody played some music, and I think I said something. People were crying, and that sort of inspired more support, I think. So I think we just needed to knuckle down and get more money.
Now, when you started, what was the sort of the sum of money that you were lending, and what sort of rates were you thinking about? How long were you giving people to pay back, etc.? And has that changed over time as a result of running Purple Shoots and gaining experience?
So the rate hasn't really changed.
Right.
We eased it up a bit, but we've kept it the same. But I think we envisaged an average loan size of about £1,500.
And you, at the moment, is this correct? It's between 500 and 3,000.
Yeah.
I mean, officially.
Officially, and we do go up to 5.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what's happened. The cost of running a business has changed over 30 years. It's gone up. So we've had to push up what we're prepared, what we lend. So we were thinking small amounts to spread the risk, basically.
Yes.
Because if we lent £1,500 and that business failed, well, okay, we've lost £1,500. But whereas people lending bigger sums, it's a much bigger disaster. So we were thinking of sort of £1,500 as the average size, and I had an idea in my head of how many we would do, but it was more than that immediately.
Yes.
It was interesting. It really opened the floodgates. As the years have gone on, that average has gone up. And actually, when we started in Wales, but we also work in England now, and the average is different in England than Wales.
Right.
It's higher.
It's higher.
Yeah. So it obviously costs more to do business in England than it does.
And what's the largest loan you've given, do you think?
So we have gone over 5, but probably not by much more. 6, probably 6. And sometimes people borrow and then need an extra bit, and then that eases it up a bit.
Right.
But we haven't gone. Well, we have done a 10 actually. We've done a 10 to a lady, but she pays us back really quickly.
Right.
So she pays us back. She's actually an ex-refugee, and her business, she pays us back over a year. Usually it's over 2 to 3 years.
And what gives you confidence to go above the 5,000 or to go up to 10,000? Was it just the assessment that you've done of her business case? Yeah,
she was unusual. I mean, she'd had a small loan from us before
and
paid it all back really quickly.
Right.
So then we had confidence that we could see that it was going well.
And what about the smallest loans you give?
So we have done a 200 a couple of originally.
And tell me about this 200, because this is fascinating. What were they borrowing for, if you remember? And did they pay back and did they grow?
Yeah, this was a young lad. It was for a training course. He wanted to do a training course to be. I'm trying to remember. I think it was a personal trainer. And he needed £200 to start, and his dad had offered to guarantee it, but the dad was deemed not bankable either.
Right.
So he couldn't borrow any money from anywhere. So we lent him the 200 for that.
Right. And do you know what happened to him? Did he go on to be a personal trainer?
I think he went on to be a personal trainer.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. And he repaid
us back.
And one of the conversations that I have when I'm speaking about microfinance to people, and one of the concerns is the delinquency rate, the rate of poor debt or people not paying back. What did you face in your early years? Was there quite a high rate of people not paying back, or did you have to give people longer? What sort of issues did you maybe not necessarily foresee, or maybe you did foresee, but you were able to live with it?
Yeah, I think I hoped it would be. I think if you look at the Grameen Bank, their failure rates are really small.
Yeah.
And actually, the research I did indicated that wouldn't be the case in our context. If you compared it with America and Europe, their failure rates are higher.
Yes.
They were higher than I hoped, and it wasn't because people sort of ran off with the money, because it's not really enough to make a new life abroad, with a few £1,000s. It was usually something happened that derailed them, or something that outside their control. Because to start with, I would beat myself up. What did I miss? Why did this one fail? And over the years, I've decided that it's a little bit of a lottery, because everything can be fine, and then somebody will have an accident and they can't get insurance, so there's no income. So what tends to happen is lots of them take much longer to pay back. So if you look at us on the FCA, I think we have to report 60% of the loan book is in default, but the failure rate is much lower than that, because we give people longer to pay back.
It's interesting, because some of the organisations that we've been speaking to about, perhaps getting some lottery funded into the organisation, they wanted to raise your interest rates, but two, they treated anyone who didn't pay back within a certain time frame as a delinquent loan or a bad loan, rather than actually, even if they take a bit longer to pay back. And those are the sort of criteria they use, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So recently we've had a lady that we lent money to in 2022, and she was supposed to pay us back in 3 years, and she had not paid us anything. Raised, but we've waited, and she was battling to get some contracts with the NHS and other organisations. She's just done it. She's just paid us the whole lot in one go. So it's worth waiting.
Yeah.
But funders look askance at that sometimes. But
But you must be managing that, because of course your loans are going out. Not everything is going to come back on those timescale you envisage. But so obviously you've got to get sort of new. Some of the money comes in, replaces that, effectively refinances that loan. But you also want to grow and make more loans. Tell me about how you manage that process.
So we're trying to keep a balance between. So we run it. The model we use is we borrow some money, and we need donated money as well to make it work. So people can lend us money and get this a tax relief. So it's quite attractive. We have quite a lot of individual people who lend us money for the tax relief.
Is that the CITR?
The CITR, Community Investment Tax Relief.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Do you want to just tell people about the CITR, just in case there's anyone who's tempted to give you your £1,000?
Well, you can lend us money, and then over 5 years you maximise the tax relief, but it's effectively 25%. You can claim over the 5 years of 5% a year. But our investors tell us it's worth 8% a year because it's pre-tax, and if you're a higher rate taxpayer, it's even better. So we have quite a few who lend us money that way.
And is that right? The minimum is 1,000 for the CITR, or have I got that wrong?
There isn't really a minimum, but we've said 1,000 because to make it, because administratively, people. The typical amount the individuals invest is 10, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
We've had 5s, 2s, 20s, 50s even.
Be ambitious. Yeah. And then tell me about the donations.
So then it has to be balanced with donations, because otherwise we can't pay them back when their loans are due. So we have to keep a balance. So then I have to manage. If we're successful with donations and we can borrow more, then we can let more money go out. So the only way that I can make the cash flow balance is to limit how much we lend.
Yes.
So last year we didn't have a very good year, so we had 3 or 4 months when we did no lending at all, because we just couldn't afford to do it. It's better now.
But it's important you do that, because otherwise it's better that you exist with a limited number of loans rather than have the ambition to lend to everyone, have nothing, as it were. We've seen some of the microfinance organisations go out of business. Now, I hosted an event for you in the House of Lords where you brought along some fantastic people who had benefited. I think I'd like you to share some of the stories of the ones that warm your heart, of the people that you've lent to, and I think some of them are amazing, but I want to hear it from you, as it were. So please do share, a few examples.
A few stories, okay. So somebody, so there's a man called Steve Roberts who we funded 2 years ago now. I met him. We do a little bit of work in prisons and encourage people to think about entrepreneurship when they're close to release, and then help them when they're out. So he was one of those. I met him in prison, and I think he thought he'd ruined his life with one mistake, and didn't think anybody would employ him when he was out. And he was probably right, because it's a difficult market, and if you've got a criminal record, you're bottom of the pile. But I talked to him about self-employment, and I think that gave him hope that actually something might happen when he got out. So when he came out, he phoned me within a few days of being released. But in that time, he'd got his car back on the road. He'd got his CSC card, which means he can work on a building site. And he just needed some money for some tools to restart, to start being, he's a floorer. He lays nice floors. That's his trade. So he has skills. So he started his business, and I met his son when I met him, and he said to me that he wanted to be a good role model for his son instead of the bad one that he'd been. So, and he's actually just recently done the last repayment on his loan. He's not missed one. So he's been a really good borrower. So that's,
And he's running a business, a viable business.
Yeah, right. Yes, and I think he's actually, he needs, he has casual people working with him because he takes on bigger contracts. So he's doing well. And another story, so let me think. So there's a lady called Steffi. She'd had an abusive relationship, and her husband had left her in huge debt, and she was trying to dig herself out of that. And she started this little business, or was wanting to start a business. But I'm now completely hooked on it. It's a craft business. Needle felting. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but it's amazing.
What was it?
Needle felting.
Right.
So yeah, I should have brought some examples. You can make little creatures. You do pictures. It's all with fleeces. Anyway, she started this. She wanted to start this business, and it was a great idea. And we lent her the money for that. And she's created this lovely community of people. She runs little workshops. She runs events. She's got a successful shop. She employs people. And she had something like £60,000 worth of debt left from her husband. It's nearly all paid back. She's almost done it. And through she's worked really hard, and it's been difficult. And the thing that a lot of our businesses struggle with is if you're somebody like me starting a business, if something goes wrong, I do have something to fall back on. I'm fine. But they're starting with nothing. So when something goes wrong, there's nowhere to go. And so every time she struggles, so she struggled in COVID, and with all the bills that she's struggling to pay, she struggled post-COVID, and she blames herself all the time. I'm a rubbish, and I'm saying, no, you're not. It's just that you've got nothing behind you. It's going to build up. But and now her daughter is in the business with her,
lovely.
so and is doing an apprenticeship on something or other, media and sales, and so she's doing all that social media. So that's.
And is it Trevor, the chap we talked about, the guy?
Trevor, yes.
The wheelchair.
Yes. So Trevor, he has MS, but actually he is in a wheelchair because he got injured doing some work in Africa somewhere. But he has to have a carer with him to enable him to work. But we lent him money to help him with his business. He runs a consultancy which advises companies on adaptations to enable disabled people to work there. And that company's going really well, and he's actually employs. Well, last time I was there, I think there were 4 other disabled people working for him in this business. And he's also runs a charity that supports a group of disabled people in Kenya. So on top of that,
it's amazing because he also told the story that he was very proud that he'd taken himself off benefits, and he used the word benefits, and he'd taken 3 or 4 other people off benefits, all with his small loan that had started, which was a hugely inspirational story.
Yeah, and he's quite an activist as well. He's quite well known in the disabled world now. People call on him for comments on things. The Welsh government use him a bit, I think. So.
But what you also do, you don't just necessarily, if someone comes to you, give them money. You also do what you call wraparound care. So sometimes someone comes to you and they're not quite ready. Tell me about how you get them ready, as it were, to be ready for a loan, and you then think they're a viable person to borrow money from you.
Okay, so it depends on the stage. So we do another thing that we copied from the Indian subcontinent. We copied the Grameen Bank model, and now we copied what they call self-help groups there, where they get people together from communities and encourage them to save money together. And certainly in India and Africa, they lend money to each other to help each other start businesses and so on. So we've brought that model here, and it actually doesn't quite work the way it works there, because we tend to attract people who are a very long way from the workplace into those groups, and it's quite a long journey for them to some of them never go all the way to start a business, but the ones who do, we support kind of through the group, encourage them to try enterprising ideas and see what works. And then often the people in the group don't need to borrow because they've sort of earned a bit and saved a bit whilst they've been in the group, and so they just start. But then individuals who come to us, and we'll do one-to-one for as long as they need it, really, to help them get the plan together, suggest research they can do, try to introduce them to people that might help them, until they're ready. So.
And this is interesting because, of course, one of the things we in the audience there might be budding entrepreneurs who want to learn the stages, as it were. So tell me about someone who comes to you who's not quite ready. What sort of advice do you give them? Do you help them with the business plans? Do you help them or do you tell them they need a business plan, they need to do market research, etc., etc.?
I think it depends where the hole is.
Right.
So sometimes we go right back and sort of look at what their skills are,
yes,
and where the gaps are. Because the thing about starting business on their own, they can't possibly be good at everything. I think they think they've got to be, but they can't be. So we need to find where the holes are and where they might need help. So with a lot of people that come to us, tech is the gap. So they might be able to manage Facebook but nothing else, and you can't really run a business these days without being able to do more of that. So we have a few volunteer mentors that will help us specifically with that. Another thing that might be a bit of an over-optimistic thought of theirs, they'll talk to a few people about their business idea, and everyone says it's great and it's going to work, and they need to do more than that to actually be sure that it's gonna work. So I encourage them to think about, well, what if that doesn't work? What will you do then? Where else? So that they've got backup plans if the first lot of sales they think they're going to get doesn't come off.
Now, you said demand really outstrips the ability to lend to all these people. Sometimes people come to you, you would lend to them if you had the money, as it were. If you did have more income, or and also someone who's generous in the audience here tonight, or someone wants to do this online, decided to give you some money, how would you expand? Would it be geographically? Would it be are there quite a lot of people in the waiting list? Does that make sense to you? What would you do with more money, as it were?
I think we'd expand our geography a little bit.
Right.
So we've kind of got Wales covered. We're working in Yorkshire and Lincolnshire there. We know there's a need in the northeast, and it would be quite easy to cover that from our team up there. And we're doing a little forays into the West Midlands, where I think there's also quite a big need. With that, we've got people in the Bristol area, so we could easily do that without adding staff.
Right.
So we could do more lending without adding cost. We've also just recently got a lady working for us in Sussex, and although that's not London, the first loan she did was actually in London.
Right.
But London might be a different ball game again, because I suspect it costs even more to start a business in London.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm not ruling it out.
It's interesting. And how do you decide where to expand to? Are these people already working for you, or they come to you and say, "We would like to expand your idea here"? How do you expand from Wales to Yorkshire to Sussex?
So Yorkshire started because we had the guy who's running it now was volunteering. He was in a commercial job and frustrated, and did some help with our impact reporting. And actually, we decided that at that point we were in Wales, and it was really difficult to get people to take us seriously. We were kind of in a tiny organisation in a backwater of the UK, and there were lots of funding opportunities that England only, not Wales. So we thought, well, we'll go over the border and we'll start something. In fact, we thought we were going to get some money from the dormant assets people, but we didn't. But
that's a long
we won't mention them. But we did get some money from Postcode Lottery to start in Yorkshire. So we started there. And actually, Yorkshire, certainly parts of Yorkshire, very similar to South Wales, where we started in their sort of old industry, the same sort of issues. So that's why we started there. The West Midlands, we've had a couple of donors give us money for the West Midlands, and they're quite keen for us to do something there. So that's why we've expanded there. Sussex, the lady approached us because she was a business advisor and constantly had people ready to start a business and those sorts of money. And so she said, could she join and work with us? So that's how it. So yes, it's a little bit who we meet.
Yes.
Because I think the people who work for us need to have a heart for the sort of people we're working for, but also have a slightly, I don't know what the word is, but we can't lend to people just because we're kind.
Yes.
You know, it's got to work.
Yes.
So you've got to have that steeliness as well. There's got to be a mix.
Yeah, exactly. They have to have a business case, don't they?
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah.
And in the same way that people went to Grameen. I mean, I met you because I wanted to set up a UK version of Kiva. If anyone who knows Kiva.org, and I've been trying since 2007 to set up my own thing with a guy called Simon Christman, who I interviewed previously, and then we were introduced to you. I thought, actually, I'll just put all my effort into helping you grow, as it were. Not very successfully, I have to say, at the moment, from what effort I've made so far. But do people now come to you and ask you for advice? I remember, I think, was it Liza from Leeds who said that she was inspired by what you do and she's going to set up her own one in Leeds? Is that right? Are there other people who come to you now?
Yes, that does happen. Yes, that does happen. The big barrier for lots of people is the FCA, because you have to be authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority to do this, and it's a big deal to do it. So the idea that somebody would set up a little local one and do it is too difficult.
Yes.
And I think I don't deliberately put people off when I explain what's involved. It does put me. Liza persevered, and she does have a little organisation in Leeds.
Yeah.
And there are a few other little ones that are just doing it very, very locally and without charging interest, which gets around the FCA.
Yes.
We've helped people with sort of the process and how we assess them and what we do to try to bottom it out as best we can.
I think one of the things I would like to encourage from the audience, either in the room or online, as it were, is that if someone wants to donate money, and I know you take from very small monthly sums or one-offs, etc., how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, well, I brought some little leaflets which you can have at the end, or just through our website. There's a donate button on the website.
Yeah.
That's
Great.
probably the easiest. pelvershoots.org.
Well, I hope very much that some people in the room or some people watching online do consider giving, no matter how small. As Karen said to me when I started work helping them, every little bit helps. I'm sure we stole that from another advertising regime. But Karen, thank you for setting up Purple Shoot. Thank you for being such an inspirational person. Thank you for the stories that I've learned over the years and sharing some of those stories tonight. But also thank you for making it clear that entrepreneurship is not only for the wealthy, but actually even for the very poorest in our society, and quite often it can help them to lift themselves out of poverty. So can we show our appreciation?